Salutations, respected viewers. This is George from Ireland. This video is about Ben Shapiro, what he's about and what I think his shortcomings are. Mr. Shapiro's shtick is publicly humiliating those who wish to reduce suffering. He's best known for going to college campuses and debating against young left-wing undergraduates and sneering at them for wanting to reduce poverty and help others and things like that. Sometimes their ideas are mutton-headed or impractical, or they're just ill-informed. But I think it doesn't reflect very well on him that he gets such a kick out of being so scornful towards people, about swaggering, about really putting them down. There we are. So he's certainly a glib and guileful debater. He's a lawyer. He's a highly educated gentleman. So certainly has a very high opinion of himself. And it would be difficult not to be, because he's accomplished a great deal, being a published journalist since he was 17, as he likes to emphasize, and he's obviously made millions of dollars. So he's happily married, he's got children, as he likes to tell us, and he belongs to the people of God, again, as he wishes to repeatedly emphasize. But a lot of his argumentation is not rational. Often he speaks in images. When he was talking about how Cuba is catastrophic and socialists don't cite this as a happy example of socialist success, saying, oh, because they're pushing 1950s cars into the sea, rather than engaging in a deeper and more logical analysis of the situation. One might still arrive at the same conclusion, that socialism is bunkum and cataclysmic, but he just uses images. I suppose it's a shortcut, but I thought he should do better heuristics than that. Use better heuristics than that as a lawyer. So he doesn't go into depth a great deal of time, but I suppose as a polemicist, his strategy is probably wise, and it certainly pays dividends. He's won a lot of plaudits from right-wingers in general, and his arguments are not too complicated for them. He speaks at very high speed, and I suppose the strategy is not to allow people to analyse what he's saying. I could speak at very high speed as well, but I'm not sure that would really help you understand what I'm trying to say. And that wouldn't make me more persuasive. In a sense, it would make me less persuasive, because you would not have sufficient time to process what was being said. Sometimes he's on the money. I agree with him about white privilege being largely a myth. Now, one could go too far. Clearly, there is some anti-black prejudice in the United States. I'm not sure it quite says that there's none, but to the extent that African Americans are informally discriminated against by some whites, yeah, white privilege is a thing, but I think it's blown out of proportion by certain people. So Ben Shapiro is right to annihilate the transgender fallacy, this specious notion that gender is completely fluid and you can say you're a man or a woman and change back and forth against all the time, and it's really just a matter of opinion. Clearly that's drivel. It's just like the emperor's new clothes. And intelligent people, professors, will subscribe to this fallacy. And anybody who points out the very blatantly obvious fact that no, such a person is male, this other person is female, and it's not up for debate, he or she would be hounded out of academic life, certainly. So Mr. Shapiro has also taken aim at Black Lives Matter. Here I largely don't agree with him, but all right, sometimes BLM exaggerate things, sometimes the rhetoric is too inflammatory. Likewise about social justice warriors, have mixed feelings about this one, but yeah, sometimes the SJW people go too far and are too entitled and all the rest of it, and they have been a bit too mollycoddled, and we've cared about their emotions a bit too much. Facts don't care about your feelings. I think that's probably the best meme that Mr. Shapiro has come up with, and that's the one that's really caught on in the blogosphere and elsewhere. That's certainly true. The trouble is he does emotionalize his rhetoric as well, and it strikes me that clearly he's emotionally invested and his self-esteem is invested in much of what he's saying. So I don't think he quite walks the walk on that one. Might come back to that about how emotion may well be occluding his judgment on particular issues that are close to his heart. He's not well informed on certain issues, such as global warming, as he says so himself. So by your own admission that you know very little about it, perhaps you shouldn't have such a decided opinion on it. All right, fair enough. I disagree with him, and I'm no climate scientist. He conflates social democracy and communism. Now, is this a rhetorical sleight of hand, or does he honestly not know? I suspect he realizes that he's deliberately confusing the two, pretending to confuse the two, just because that will trick some of his followers. Mr. Shapiro likes to emphasize that he's a Zionist and he's got some fellow feeling for the Jewish state. I don't know whether he's a citizen of it or not, but he wouldn't like to acknowledge that Israel was mostly founded by socialists, has been ruled by the Labour Party, Socialist Party, about half of its life. El Al, their airline there, is government subsidised, it's got publicly funded healthcare, all the kind of things that would make him spit blood. So if this is also detestable, shouldn't it be anti-Zionist? If Israel is just so immoral and socialism is so selfish as he claims, it's really staggering he should make that statement. So despite being a man of superior academic ability, he's got a decidedly narrow vocabulary. Is he trying to meet his listeners halfway by simplifying his lexis? Perhaps. There's a distinct lack of emotional intelligence to Mr. Shapiro, not uncommon among people at that level, and perhaps I suffer from this myself. He often doesn't look at the camera when he's speaking. Make eye contact. So I wonder whether there's the touch of Asperger's syndrome there, the black and white thinking that he's got. So he comes over as conceited, and he sneers at the people who disagree with them. He seems to think they're not just misguided, but moronic and immoral. And he's quite a moralistic person about life choices, and he's never made a mistake in his life, so it would appear from his speechifying. Like he has contempt for these young graduates who can't get well-paid jobs because they did lesbian dance theory, which is supposed to be droll, I'm guessing. I don't know if such a subject exists. And does it not bespeak contempt for lesbians? Do they not deserve respect as well? Okay, perhaps they don't deserve respect, that has to be earned, but certainly don't deserve scorn. Maybe I'm wrong. It certainly implied homophobia to me. And dance, I mean, I think it's not an academic subject, but you can certainly get degrees in it and thereon. But I think he hits on a wider point, that there are Mickey Mouse courses at many universities. So he's not a mirthful sort of person. That lesbian dance theory quip, that's about as close as he comes to humour. He very seldom smiles, I noticed. His psychological profile must be scintillating. He's a deeply serious chap. But he engages in casuistry a lot of the time, seeming to argue that up is down. Like saying that the United States, the system with the most expensive healthcare in the world, if I got that right, that's better than a publicly funded system where, all right, it's not actually free because people are paying taxes, but really the cost per capita would be much, much lower. So no, it must be all profit driven. Yeah, but what about people on low incomes? And that's a large proportion who couldn't afford healthcare. Sometimes particular treatments or medicines they couldn't afford, sometimes nothing at all. What about them? Don't care, don't give a damn? Medicare, Medicaid, is that socialism? Don't think he's given a clear answer to the last one. So blatantly, it can't be better for the average person if it's unaffordable for them. So this is where his debating skill, I think, goes wrong, where perhaps he relishes the challenge of defending the indefensible. He rubs people up the wrong way, though he certainly has his groupies, often adopting a scornful tone and his facial expression. He's just glowering with contempt and hostility towards his disputants. And I remember him slamming Bernie Sanders as, "You stupid dumbass," for wanting higher taxation on investments. And this is why Mr. Shapiro is against taxing the super rich more, because it'll create more jobs. I thought, not a very convincing argument at the moment, where the United States has got record low unemployment, as Trumpsters like to trumpet. And that's not the problem, job creation. And often poor people are working 2 jobs, even 3 jobs, just to make ends meet. And even then couldn't afford to see the doctor. So hard work, well, no, hard work doesn't guarantee you a decent standard of living. And a decent standard of living would not just be about money, it would be about a little bit of leisure time. And obviously being overworked and stressed out is going to contribute to ill health. So I think I don't buy his argument that we must be nice to the billionaires or else it'll crash the economy, because there are other countries with higher taxes, certainly for the super rich, who have healthy economic growth. I realise one could go too far and too much taxation of the super rich would be bad for the economy. So I suspect that he overstates his case. He overreaches himself, makes himself a little bit vulnerable, and doesn't appear to perceive there being any middle ground. What is fascinating is to what extent Mr. Shapiro actually believes what he says, because I believe it was exposed a few months ago as being paid for these opinions by right-wing think tanks. Not that they were buying his articles as such, but paid to be a shill, as it were, to be a hack, pumping out hardline capitalist propaganda. Now, incidentally, I'm a right-winger, I'm a capitalist. I don't go as far as Mr. Shapiro. My thinking is not as categorical as him. So he's certainly someone who's enthralling to listen to, though rather irritating much of the time.